Good morning, everyone. I'm not so used to be doing talks, so sorry if I'm a little bit nervous. But I'm Sophie, and I'm a filmmaker and a writer. I recently released my short film called Wait. It would premiered in Leuven at the Short Film Festival, and I wrote a novel, and the title in English is called All Those Days That Have Passed. And I'm also part of the Wanda Collective, which is a collective of filmmakers who fight for the rights of underrepresented groups within the film sector. Well, that's it. And then they asked me to do this talk because this is the Pinks Festival, and I'm queer and I'm trans, so I guess I was the right fit. And when I first heard that the talk was going to be about, or the theme was going to be monumental, the first thing that came up in my mind is like a hot topic right now is the representation of trans people by cis actors, and it's been tended to be awarded with like Academy Awards all the time, and I think it's a discussion maybe we all know about. And then I was going to do like a whole angry talk about how problematic the trans representation was. But then again, I'm no media historian, and there's also a great documentary on trans representation called Disclosure, and it's on Netflix, and they can do it way better than I can. And I more wanted to talk from a personal standpoint and kind of discover together what we can understand with the word trans, and think a little bit further than only trans as a body. So I'm gonna do like a little personal manifesto of films that have meant a lot to me. I'm gonna talk first about a movie, the one of the first like art movies I saw in my life. And yeah, let's first watch the clip. Yeah, so that was a movie, some clips from the movie Boys Don't Cry. I don't know if you know the movie. I think it's pretty well known. And around when I was 12 or 13, I started moving away from movies like Freaky Friday and She's All That, and I discovered like more art films. And this was one of the films that I saw as the first film. And when I got into movies, I really got into movies, and I read about the Oscars all year, and I read about the predictions, and I stayed up all night to watch the Oscars and go to school with no sleep, and I cried if the movie didn't win that I wanted to win. And this was like one movie that was Hilary Swank got the award for Best Actress. And then when I moved away from like mainstream movies to art movies, I also discovered like films with lesbian themes in it, like Gia, or you had a couple of other movies here. And I watched these films like obsessively over and over again without realizing that I might be gay. And I put it away as being like super interested in this topic only. And so when I watched this movie, like even more explosions happened inside my head, because first of all, I never heard of gay or trans, and even trans was for me like I had a very stereotypical view of what it was, and this is also a very like a problematic depiction of what being trans was, but I just knew as trans like cross-dressers and stuff. And when I saw this, I thought I was gonna faint. I wanted to be Brandon, the main character, who's played by Hilary Swank. I was in love with him. I was also in love with Chloe Sevigny, the girl that he's in love with, and I wanted this impossible love. I felt their love, and I watched this movie like over and over and over again, like a teenage boy watching like a porn movie in secret, and I watched all the sex scenes like 10,000 times. And I remember thinking at the time also being so relieved for Hilary Swank that she got to go back to normal after doing this role, and I was really concerned that this was like a super hard thing for her to play a trans person, and that she really deserved an Oscar for like putting herself out there to do that. So it's pretty sad to think about it that I was like a transphobe even when I'm trans now, and also pretty gay phobic or homophobic as a teenager. And I think if you watch these kinds of movies and trans people and gay people get killed all the time and the love is impossible, it's not so difficult to think about that you kind of get this self-hatred, because this is what the media tells you over and over again. One second, sorry. So that's just kind of to sketch how I was like the first contact that I had with the representation of trans, and I've been out as gay since I was since like 12 years or something. I only recently got out as trans, and I think the announcement of this talk was like the biggest coming out I've done. And people who don't know me or who only know me a little bit, they are confused when I tell them that I'm trans. And I got the question, so were you a boy and are you now a girl, or are you a girl who's actually a boy? So, and they're just really concerned with my body parts. And when I tell them, no, I'm not either of those, like I'm trans or non-binary, which is not even a term I use for people to make it easier for them, but not especially for me. And 10 years ago would have horrified me if they would be confused about my gender, but now I'm actually, I like it when they're confused. And that they start thinking that just by my presence alone, they start thinking outside of the box. And I was thinking about it that, again, like I am a man, I'm a woman, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, and I started thinking about being trans as a verb, like I transgress, I transverse borders, I transverse into unknown. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about what it means to be trans, just more than just my body parts, kind of connect these films that transgress borders for me that were first set for me and then widened. And funnily enough, almost all these movies are about an impossible love. But first I'm going to talk about a really big cliche. The Matrix. We all know the movie, I don't have to summarize it. So we all know the question, do you want to take the red or the blue pill? And it's like become a parable appropriated by, I think, even like the extreme right. And also it's like a really alive metaphor inside the trans community. And I think we're the right ones to take up the story, because the Wachowski sisters came out as trans as well. And if you have a trans reading of the film, is that the blue pill, if you keep taking the blue pill, you keep thinking like things are set in stone, that you're a man, you're a woman, or either you're trans and there's something wrong in your head and it can be fixed medically and your body can be transformed. And there's nothing in between. Everything is set and it's not in movement. And when Neo takes the red pill and he comes into this world and everybody's like this kind of gray, genderless form of being, and they load into this computer program called a construct. Gender is a construct, and basically when you take the red pill, the ground falls away under your feet. But you can be basically anything you want. If you take the red pill, you can be a shapeshifter. So I think the Matrix made like a nice blueprint to think about gender more than just like you're this, you're that, and how it can be in movement. Now I'm gonna make a really big jump to another film, but more in the theme of how movies can transgress something or can open up something new in your mind. So I'm gonna show you a scene from the film that made me want to be a filmmaker. That is the movie called In the Mood for Love, and it's about these two people, and they live in the same house. They rent a room there with their partner, and they grow close to each other when they find out that their partners are sleeping with each other. And I only learned later that this actually Sofia Coppola was for Lost in Translation was inspired by this film, but it kind of has the same themes, and this is even people who go bent under like society's norms in Hong Kong in the 60s at this time, and about like they don't speak a lot, and they're very closed off and not in connection with their surroundings or with themselves. And yeah, they kind of go bent under the chains that they've put on themselves and the chains that society put on them. But the most thing that was so beautiful in this film is that it made me realize that film is also something you feel with your heart and with your body. Like this movie is so much about like this repetitive song that comes in, and the color and the stolen glances. The most meaning is in the glances and not in the words that they say. And yeah, so to experience something with your body is, I guess, it was also a new way of looking to the world for me. And now all these stories about an impossible love kind of come to a conclusion into the next scene I'm gonna show. I think most people know this movie. I don't have to really summarize it. But I think for the people who watch it, maybe they can identify with this feeling of watching a queer movie made by queer people, and it kind of gives this like euphoric experience to watch a movie about queer love that's not exploitative in any way at all. And I think that's really due to being made by a queer team, like the actresses are queer themselves, and Celine Sciamma is too. And they really think about it, the politics of making a queer movie too. And so to talk about all the time these impossible love movies that I've shown you until now, Celine Sciamma always talks in her interviews about that she wanted to make a film about love or lesbian love that is possible. And for a filmmaker, you hear all the time through like funding bodies or to art school or film school that the audience should be on the edge of their seat all the time, and they should have the equal amounts of hope and fear. Will they or won't they? Forcing you into a story like the almost forcing you into a story of like a tragic love story. Either it's possible or impossible. And there's nothing in between. But this film is, that their love is not really possible because of the time that they're living in, but it's so great to see a movie that's almost without conflict, and we are always told to make movies about conflict, that conflict is the driving force of a movie, and nothing, everything else you do is an annoying art movie. But I think this showed like the opposite, because it's so beautiful to just watch a love coming into being and like refusing to be tragedy porn like Boys Don't Cry is. Like it's totally tragic. So this was a really refreshing take for me as a filmmaker, to not always think about, oh yeah, but I should make things more and more shitty for my characters. But you can also love your characters and not like pull them down all the time. And besides that, I think this scene is also a really great, like The Matrix was a nice blueprint to think about what it means being trans. I think this is a nice blueprint for what it means to be an artist. You've always had the muse and the artist, and the muse is the object and static and sits still and is kind of this tragic character usually when it comes to film or novels. But here in the movie, it's being explored what happens like on the level of the story, but also on a meta level, what happens when the subject looks back, when the artist is just as fragile as the one who's the story's about. And the question all the time, who is telling this story and why am I telling the story, and what is art when there's consent from both sides, from not only the artist side who forces his worldview upon whatever story he's telling, but when it's what happens when art or movies becomes a collaborative process. So yeah, I think it raises a lot of interesting questions about like the all-knowing artist. I think it kind of deconstructs it, and it's like the last scene I wanted to give to you to think about what it means, what love means, and what making art means.